Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Adam Rourke adjusted his tie as he walked through the mahogany doors of the Capitol Grill. The restaurant buzzed with the quiet conversations of Denver's elite, crystal glasses clinking against fine china. He spotted them immediately at the corner table: Kendra, her brother Nico, and her father Marshall. The table was set for four, but the empty chair felt like a trap. Kendra wore her black Armani dress, the one she saved for important occasions. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect chignon, not a strand out of place. She didn't look up when he approached. "Sorry I'm late," Adam said, pulling out his chair. Traffic was murder on I-25. Marshall Alcott looked exactly like what he was: old money wrapped in a $3,000 suit. His silver hair was combed back, and his blue eyes held the cold calculation of a man who'd built his law firm by destroying others. "Punctuality has never been your strong suit, Adam." "Dad." Kendra's voice carried a warning edge. Nico fidgeted with his napkin, avoiding eye contact. At 33, he still carried himself like the spoiled fraternity brother he'd once been, though the designer clothes couldn't hide the stress lines around his eyes. His restaurant chain had been hemorrhaging money for months. Adam settled into his seat, studying the faces around him. Something was wrong. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "So," Adam reached for his water glass. "What's this about? When you called, you said we needed to discuss our marriage." Kendra's hand trembled slightly as she reached for her wine. She took a long sip, then set the glass down with deliberate precision. "Adam, I've been thinking about us, about where we're going, and—" Marshall leaned forward, his lawyer instincts taking over. "Adam, let's cut to the chase. This marriage isn't working." "Marshall," Adam's voice remained steady. "Last I checked, you weren't part of my marriage. I am when my daughter's happiness is at stake." Kendra finally looked at him, her green eyes hard as emeralds. "Adam, I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like smoke. Around them, other diners continued their conversations, oblivious to the bomb that had just exploded at table 12. That Adam didn't flinch. He'd suspected this was coming for months. The late nights at her yoga classes, the way she'd stopped asking about his work, the distance that had grown between them like a canyon. "I see." He folded his hands on the table. "And this required an audience?" "We're not an audience." Marshall's voice carried the authority of a man used to winning. "We're family. Family doesn't ambush family." Nico finally spoke up, his voice cracking slightly. "Look, man, it's nothing personal. It's just business." "Business?" Adam's eyebrows rose. "My marriage is business?" Marshall slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "These are divorce papers. We've already filed. Irreconcilable differences." Adam didn't touch the envelope. "Generous of you to file for my wife. She needed representation," Marshall said. "And I'm the best in Colorado." "At what?" "Destroying families." Kendra's facade cracked for just a moment. "Adam, please don't make this harder than it has to be." "Harder?" Adam laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Kendra, 3 weeks ago you were talking about taking a vacation to Tuscany. Last week you were planning our anniversary dinner. Now you want a divorce. And I'm making it hard." "People change," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, they do." The waiter approached, tablet in hand. "Are we ready to order?" "Actually," Marshall waved him away, "we won't be staying long." Adam's phone buzzed against his leg. He glanced at the screen. Junie, his assistant. He told her not to call unless it was urgent. "Excuse me," he said, answering the call. "This better be important." Junie's voice was breathless with excitement. "Sir, you need to sit down. The numbers just came in from the market close." "I'm sitting. Your stock just hit 100 million. The IPO exceeded every projection. You did it, Adam. You're worth $100 million. The phone felt heavy in his hand. Around the table, 3 pairs of eyes watched him, trying to read his expression. "Are you certain?" "The board is calling it the most successful tech IPO in Colorado history." "Sir, you're officially a centimillionaire." Adam ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The silence at the table was deafening. Marshall leaned forward. "Good news, I hope." Adam stood slowly, straightening his jacket. His movements were deliberate, controlled. "You know what, Marshall? You just made the worst mistake of your life." He turned to Kendra, who had gone pale. "All three of you just made the worst mistake of your lives." Without another word, he walked away, leaving the divorce papers untouched on the table. 2 hours later, Adam's downtown office. Adam sat behind his desk, staring out at the Denver skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, and somewhere out there, Kendra was probably celebrating her freedom. She had no idea what she'd just walked away from. His mind drifted back to how it all began. He'd grown up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, in a 2-bedroom trailer that leaked when it rained. His mother, Carol, worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table after his father left when Adam was 12. She cleaned offices at night, worked the morning shift at a diner, and spent afternoons stocking shelves at Walmart. "Education is your way out," she'd tell him while darning holes in his school clothes. "You're smart, baby. Smarter than any of them." She was right. Adam taught himself to code on a secondhand laptop he'd bought with money from mowing lawns. By 17, he was building websites for local businesses. By 20, he'd earned a scholarship to the University of Colorado's MBA program. That's where he met Kendra. She was everything he wasn't: wealthy, confident, connected. Her father owned half of downtown Denver, and her trust fund could have bought Adam's entire neighborhood back home. But she was also brilliant, driven, and when she smiled at him across the lecture hall during their first economics class, his world shifted. "You're different," she told him after their first study session. "Most guys just want to talk about my father's money or my connections. You actually listen." For 2 years, she did support him. When his laptop died, she bought him a new one. When he couldn't afford the expensive textbooks, she shared hers. When he worried about student loans, she insisted money shouldn't be a barrier to his education. But Adam wasn't stupid. He saw how her friends looked at him, the scholarship kid who didn't belong at their country club dinners. He noticed how she changed the subject when he talked about his mother or his hometown. And he watched how her face would tighten when professors praised his ideas over hers to be why their final semester. She'd stopped asking about his business plan for the tech startup he was developing. She'd roll her eyes when he worked late in the computer lab, calling it his little hobby. "When are you going to focus on something real?" she'd ask. "My father could get you a position at his firm. Corporate law pays well." But Adam had learned to read people. He saw the hunger in her eyes when she talked about his potential earnings. He noticed how she'd casually mentioned joint bank accounts and shared assets. So he made a decision that would save him years later. He called Zeke Brody. Zeke was 58, a former professor who'd left academia to build his own consulting empire. He'd mentored Adam through his hardest classes and had become something of a father figure. "I need to protect what I'm building," Adam had told him over coffee. "Smart kid," Zeke had replied. "Love makes people stupid. Business shouldn't." Together, they'd structured Adam's company through a series of holding trusts and corporate entities. Adam maintained complete control, but the legal ownership was buried so deep that even the best lawyers would need months to untangle it. The company was registered in Delaware with offshore trustees and bulletproof corporate protections. When Adam married Kendra 3 years later, she signed a prenup that looked generous but protected nothing of real value. The house, the cars, the joint checking account, all window dressing. His real assets were untouchable. "You don't trust me," she'd said when he'd insisted on the prenup. "I don't trust anyone with my life's work," he'd replied. Now, sitting in his office with the Denver lights spread below him, Adam realized he'd been preparing for this moment for 8 years. 1 week later, Adam's phone buzzed with notifications every few minutes. Social media, news alerts, text messages from friends and business associates. Kendra's public relations machine was running at full speed. The Denver Post headline read, "Tech mogul's wife speaks out about emotional abuse." The article featured a photo of Kendra looking devastated outside their Highlands Ranch home, Nico's arm around her shoulders in a protective gesture. Adam became obsessed with work. The article quoted her as saying, "He'd disappear for days. When he was home, he was cold, distant. I felt like I was married to a stranger." The piece painted a picture of a successful woman finally finding the courage to leave an emotionally abusive workaholic. Social media ate it up. Hashtag Kendra Strong, started trending. Women's empowerment groups praised her bravery. Business publications analyzed whether Adam's personal issues would affect his company's stock price. But Adam had something they didn't know about. 3 months ago, he discovered Kendra's affair by accident. He'd been looking for his charger in her purse when her phone lit up with a text from Silas Grady. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Tell Adam you're at yoga again." Silas, his former best friend from business school. The same Silas who'd been a groomsman at their wedding. The same Silas who'd been coming to their house for dinner twice a month, shaking Adam's hand and complimenting Kendra's cooking while planning to betray him. Instead of confronting them, Adam had done what he did best. He'd gathered intelligence. Kendra had forgotten that their iCloud accounts were linked. Every photo she took, every location she visited, every text message was automatically backed up to their shared family account. Adam had downloaded everything. Screenshots of intimate messages, GPS logs showing her at Silas's apartment when she claimed to be at yoga, photos they'd taken together at restaurants and hotels around the city. The most damning evidence was from their own security system. Kendra had brought Silas to their lake house, the same house where she and Adam had spent their honeymoon. The cameras had captured everything. Them kissing by the fireplace, sharing a bottle of wine Adam had been saving for their anniversary, making love in the bed where Adam slept, but Adam hadn't released any of it. Let them hang themselves, he'd told Junie when she'd asked why he wasn't fighting back against the media coverage. Quietly, because Adam understood something that Kendra, Marshall, and Nico didn't. The truth was a weapon, and weapons were most effective when your enemies didn't see them coming. Marshall Alcott's law firm, 2 weeks after the dinner, Marshall Alcott's corner office overlooked downtown Denver, its windows offering a commanding view of the city he'd helped shape through decades of ruthless legal maneuvering. His mahogany desk was covered with documents, depositions, and financial statements. Across from him sat Kendra and 3 of his best associates. "The community property laws in Colorado are clear," Marshall said, adjusting his reading glasses. "Anything acquired during the marriage belongs to both spouses equally." Kendra nodded eagerly. "His company was just an idea when we got married. I supported him emotionally, financially. I deserve half. More than half," added Jessica Wright, one of Marshall's senior associates. "We're arguing that your emotional and financial support was instrumental in the company's development. Without you, there would be no success." Marshall smiled the predatory smile that had terrorized opposing counsel for 30 years. "We'll take everything. The house, the cars, half the company's stock, and monthly spousal support. By the time we're done, Adam Rourke will understand the cost of crossing the Alcott family." 3 hours later, Marshall's confidence had evaporated. "What do you mean corporate entity?" Kendra's voice rose to near hysteria. David Chun, Marshall's top corporate attorney, spread the documents across the conference table. His face was grim. "Adam's company isn't owned by Adam. It's owned by something called RB Holdings, which is owned by Mountain Trust Services, which is owned by a Delaware corporation called Apex Ventures, which is owned by a Cayman Islands trust." In English, David, Marshall snapped. "He doesn't own the company. He's listed as Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director, but he has no direct ownership stake that we can claim." Kendra stared at the papers as if they were written in a foreign language. "That's impossible. He built it. It's his. Legally, it's not," David continued. "The corporate structure is bulletproof. It would take months just to identify all the entities involved, and even then, we need to prove these aren't legitimate business structures." Marshall's jaw tightened. "What about the house? The cars? All owned by the trust as well. Even their checking account is funded by consulting fees paid to Adam from the trust. He owns almost nothing in his personal name." "This is fraud," Kendra said. "He's hiding assets." David shook his head. "It's brilliant legal planning. Everything was set up before your marriage. He never hid it, he just structured it properly." Marshall leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. 40 years of practicing law, and he'd never seen corporate protection this thorough from someone so young. "There's something else," David said quietly. "The Colorado infidelity statute. What about it? If we can prove adultery, it nullifies spousal support claims. And in Colorado, if the wrong party can demonstrate emotional distress and financial damage due to the infidelity." Marshall's face went white. They could sue us. More than that, they could take everything. Kendra's hands shook as she reached for her purse. I need some air. Nico's restaurant, Cherry Creek. 1 week later, Nico Alcott poured himself his third whiskey of the afternoon. His flagship restaurant, Primo Italiano, was empty except for a few lunch stragglers and his increasingly concerned staff. The lunch rush that used to pack the place had dwindled to a trickle over the past 6 months. His phone buzzed with another text from his creditors. The restaurant group he'd expanded too quickly was bleeding money. 3 locations had already closed. He was 2 months behind on rent at the others. When Adam walked through the front door, Nico almost dropped his glass. Adam. Nico stood, smoothing his wrinkled shirt. I wasn't expecting you. I bet you weren't. Adam took a seat at the bar, his movements calm and deliberate. Nice place. Heard business has been slow. It's just a rough patch. The economy, you know. Adam nodded to the bartender. Bourbon neat. He turned back to Nico. How much are you into them for? Who? Don't play stupid, Nico. Your creditors. How much? Nico's face flushed. That's not really your business. 2.7 million, Adam said quietly. Plus interest. Plus penalties for late payments. The color drained from Nico's face. How do you know that? Same way I know about the tax liens. The unpaid vendor invoices. The staff paychecks that bounced last week. Adam, look, if this is about Kendra. This isn't about Kendra. This is about loyalty. The bartender placed Adam's bourbon in front of him. He took a small sip, savoring the burn. I have a proposition for you, Adam said. I'm developing a new software platform. Food service management. Point of sale, inventory tracking, customer analytics. It could revolutionize restaurant operations. Nico leaned forward, desperation flickering in his eyes. Yeah, I need someone tested. Someone with multiple locations, varied customer bases. Someone who understands the industry. That sounds perfect. When do we start? Adam smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. There's just one condition. Complete confidentiality. You'd be signing an NDA that would make your head spin. Nothing about the project leaves this room. Of course. Absolutely. Good. Adam slid a business card across the bar. Call my assistant tomorrow. She'll set up the first meeting. After Adam left, Nico sat alone, staring at the business card. For the first time in months, he felt hope. What he didn't know was that the software Adam had described didn't exist. What did exist was a carefully planned trap, and Nico had just walked into it. 2 weeks later. Are you absolutely certain? Adam asked Junie over the phone. Positive. Nico met with representatives from Quantum Dynamics yesterday. Same restaurant, same booth. He had a laptop with him and was showing them documents. Quantum Dynamics was Adam's biggest competitor, run by Trevor Walsh, a former Silicon Valley executive who'd moved to Denver specifically to challenge Adam's dominance in business management software. Did he get on video? Everything. He handed over what looked like a USB drive. They gave him an envelope. Adam smiled. Nico had taken the bait exactly as planned. The fake software specifications Adam had given him were watermarked with invisible digital signatures. Any company that tried to use them would be caught red-handed. Junie, call Richard Steinberg at Morrison & Associates. Tell him I need to file suit for corporate espionage and breach of contract. And give me a meeting with Trevor Walsh. You want to sue your brother-in-law, ex-brother-in-law. And yes, Quantum Dynamics headquarters. 3 days later, Trevor Walsh's office was a monument to Silicon Valley excess transplanted to Colorado, exposed brick walls, standing desks, and motivational posters about disrupting the paradigm. Trevor himself was 45, but dressed 25, his gray hair dyed black and his skinny jeans paired with a blazer that cost more than most people's cars. Adam Rourke. Trevor stood with arms spread wide. To what do I owe the pleasure? Adam placed a thick folder on Trevor's glass desk. Corporate espionage. Theft of proprietary information. Conspiracy to defraud. Trevor's smile faltered. I'm sorry. 3 days ago, your people met with Nico Alcott. He provided you with software specifications stolen from my company. That's a serious accusation. Adam opened the folder, revealing photographs of Nico's meeting with Quantum employees. These are serious photographs. Trevor picked up one of the images, his face growing pale. Adam, I had no idea these were stolen. Nico said he was developing his own restaurant management system. Did he? Because these specifications were created specifically for this test. They contain digital watermarks that can be traced directly back to my servers. Look, if there's been a misunderstanding, there's been a theft. The question is whether you're going to cooperate with my attorneys or whether I'm going to assume you were complicit. Trevor sank into his chair. What do you want? Nico, everything he gave you. Complete records of your communications and your testimony in court. And if I cooperate? Adam smiled coldly. Then maybe I don't destroy your company in the process. 1 month later, Denver County Courthouse Nico stood outside the courthouse, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. The civil suit had moved faster than anyone expected. Adam's legal team had presented overwhelming evidence of corporate espionage, and Quantum Dynamics had cooperated fully to avoid their own prosecution. Mr. Alcott, the reporter from Denver Business Journal, thrust a microphone toward him. Do you have any comment on the judge's ruling? Nico looked defeated. The court had awarded Adam $2 million in damages plus legal fees. Nico's assets would be seized to satisfy the judgment. His remaining restaurants would be shuttered. His house would go into foreclosure. No comment, he mumbled, pushing past the cameras, but Adam was waiting by his car. Nico, what do you want, Adam? You won. You destroyed me. You destroyed yourself. I just provided the rope. Nico's face crumbled. My kids, Adam. My family. We're going to lose everything. You should have thought about that before you betrayed me. I was desperate. The creditors were calling 10 times a day. I thought if I could just... You thought you could sell me out and get rich. You were wrong. Adam walked away, leaving Nico standing alone in the courthouse parking lot at Adam's office. Late evening, Junie knocked on Adam's door, carrying a tablet and a knowing smile. The package you requested is ready. Adam looked up from his computer. For weeks, the media had painted Kendra as a wronged woman finding her strength. She'd appeared on morning shows, given interviews to women's magazines, and was scheduled to speak at a domestic violence awareness event next week. Show me. Junie handed him the tablet. On the screen was a security camera feed from their lake house, dated 6 weeks before Kendra had filed for divorce. The timestamp showed 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, the same Tuesday she told Adam she was going to yoga retreat in Boulder. The video was crystal clear. Kendra and Silas sat by the stone fireplace, sharing a bottle of Dom Perignon that Adam had been saving for their wedding anniversary. They were kissing, her hands tangled in his hair, their bodies pressed together with unmistakable intimacy. How long is it? 47 minutes. But we edited it down to the most compelling moments. Adam watched as the camera captured them moving to the bedroom. He felt nothing, no pain, no anger, just cold calculation. The metadata, unaltered. Date, time, location, all verified. Our tech guys say it would pass any forensic examination. Social media accounts. Anonymous uploads to 6 different platforms simultaneously. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and Reddit. Each from different IP addresses, different devices. Untraceable. Adam nodded. Do it. At exactly 8 p.m. Mountain Time, the video went live across every major social media platform. The caption was simple. While claiming yoga retreat, prominent divorce advocate Kendra Alcott was actually at her husband's lake house with another man. Make your own judgment. Within an hour, hashtag Kendra Exposed was trending nationally. The next morning, Kendra's phone had been ringing nonstop since 6 a.m. Reporters, friends, business associates, her publicist, everyone wanted a statement. She sat in her Cherry Hills mansion, still in her pajamas, watching her life implode in real time. Her Instagram followers had dropped from 850,000 to 200,000 overnight. The comment section was a wasteland of angry accusations and judgmental memes. Her inbox was flooded with cancellation notices. Kendra, her publicist, Amanda Torres, paced the living room like a caged animal. We need to get ahead of this. Issue a statement, claim the video was doctored, something. It wasn't doctored, Kendra said quietly. Amanda stopped pacing. What? The video is real. That's Silas. That's the lake house. Jesus Christ, Kendra. Do you understand what you've done? Kendra's phone buzzed with a text from her agent at Pinnacle Speakers Bureau. All speaking engagements canceled effective immediately. Contract terminated. Another buzz. Her publisher, due to recent developments, we're postponing publication of your memoir indefinitely. Another. The Domestic Violence Organization. We're withdrawing your invitation to speak at our gala. By noon, Kendra had lost her book deal, her speaking engagements, 3 endorsement contracts, and her board position at the Women's Business Alliance. The video had been viewed 18 million times. Marshall Alcott's law firm. The following week, Marshall stared at the resignation letter on his desk. It was the 4th one this week. His partners were jumping ship faster than rats from a sinking yacht. Marshall, his longtime partner Robert Hastings, stood in the doorway, his expression grim. We need to talk. If this is about the Peterson account, it's about all the accounts. Half our corporate clients have terminated their contracts. The Morrison family pulled their business. Even the Thornton estate is reconsidering. Marshall's reputation had been built over 40 years of aggressive litigation and strategic political connections. But reputation was a fragile thing, and the public exposure of his daughter's affair had tainted everything he'd built. People will forget, Marshall said, though his voice lacked conviction. No, they won't. Not when Adam Rourke is reminding them. What do you mean? Robert closed the door and took a seat. Adam bought the Riverside Properties portfolio yesterday. Guess which building houses our offices? Marshall's blood ran cold. He's our landlord as of yesterday, and he's not renewing commercial leases for any tenants associated with reputation management controversies. That's a direct quote from his property management company. He can't do that. Actually, he can. The lease expires in 6 months, and as long as he doesn't discriminate based on protected classes, he can refuse to renew for any reason. Marshall stood and walked to his windows, looking out at the city he'd once commanded. Now it felt like a foreign place where he no longer belonged. There's more, Robert continued. The Colorado Bar Association received an ethics complaint yesterday. Anonymous tip about potential conflicts of interest in representing family members. That's ridiculous. Lawyers represent family members all the time, not when they're also business partners in undisclosed real estate ventures. Marshall spun around. How could anyone know about? He stopped. The only person who could have known about his silent partnership in Kendra's boutique investments was someone with access to very private financial records. He's been investigating us, Marshall said quietly. For months, by the look of it. Bank records, property filings, business licenses. Everything's legal, but it doesn't look good when it's all laid out in one complaint. Marshall's phone rang. The caller ID showed his biggest client, Meridian Corporation. Marshall, the CEO's voice was cold. I'm afraid we're going to be making a change in legal representation. Frank, we've worked together for 15 years, and I appreciate that. But recent events have made the board uncomfortable with our association. Nothing personal. After he hung up, Marshall stared at the phone for a long moment. How many more are we going to lose? He asked Robert. All of them, probably. Adam Rourke has friends in every industry in this city. And word travels fast about attorneys who can't keep their family scandals private. 2 weeks later, the auction sign in front of the Alcott family estate was small and discreet, but it might as well have been a billboard. Marshall stood on his circular driveway, watching strangers walk through the house where he'd raised Kendra, where 3 generations of Alcotts had built their legacy. Mr. Alcott, the real estate agent approached with a clipboard. We have several serious bidders. The minimum bid will be $3.2 million. Marshall nodded absently. The house was worth $6 million, but distress sales never brought full value to a black Tesla pulled up to the gate. Adam Rourke stepped out, dressed in jeans and a casual button-down shirt. He looked younger somehow, as if the stress of the past months had lifted from his shoulders. Marshall. Adam's voice was polite but cold. Adam, come to Glow. Actually, I came to make an offer. The auction isn't until next week. Not for the house. For your lake property in Breckenridge. Marshall's face darkened. The lake house had been in his family for 60 years. It was the last asset he'd hoped to keep. It's not for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. Adam handed him a cashier's check. For $0.5 million. Cash. Today. Marshall looked at the check. It was more than the property was worth, more than he could hope to get in a forced sale. What? Adam smiled, and for a moment, Marshall saw something predatory in his expression. I'm turning it into a corporate retreat center. Team building exercises, leadership seminars. I think it'll be very popular with tech companies. The implication was clear. The place where Marshall's family had created memories for 3 generations would become a playground for the industry that Adam dominated. I'll need an answer by 5 o'clock, Adam said, walking back to his car. Marshall stood alone on his driveway, holding a check that represented the end of everything his family had built. At 4:59 p.m., he called Adam's office and accepted the offer. Silas Grady's downtown apartment. 2 weeks later, Silas paced his high-rise apartment, phone pressed to his ear, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. What do you mean the funding fell through? He shouted at his phone. You said the series, it was guaranteed. The voice on the other end was apologetic but firm. The venture capital firm had changed their minds about backing Silas's new company, Innovate Tech Solutions. Something about reputational concerns and market instability. It was the third investor to back out this week. Silas threw his phone onto the leather couch and walked to the bar cart in the corner. His hand shook as he poured 3 fingers of scotch and downed it in one gulp. Everything had been going according to plan. After the security footage of him and Kendra went public, he'd weathered the initial storm by positioning himself as a startup founder ready to disrupt the business software industry. He'd claimed that his intimate knowledge of Adam's company would help him build something better. The tech blogs have been interested. Former insider plans to challenge Rourke Empire, TechCrunch had written. Several investors had expressed preliminary interest. Then the lawsuits started that Adam's lawyers had filed for slander, claiming Silas was using insider information to damage his former company's reputation. They'd also sued for violation of non-disclosure agreements that Silas had signed years ago when Adam had shared early development plans with him as a friend. It's a nuisance suit, Silas's lawyer had assured him. They can't prove you violated any NDAs or shared proprietary information. But legal expenses were mounting. His business partner had jumped ship after the first depositions. 2 potential co-founders had backed out, citing too much legal uncertainty. And now the investors were running scared that Silas's doorbell rang. He looked through the peephole and saw a process server holding an envelope. Silas Grady. Yeah, you've been served. Silas took the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a summons for a new lawsuit. This one from Adam's company alleging theft of trade secrets and conspiracy to defraud. The monetary damages sought were $15 million. 6 months later, Arapahoe County Courthouse Judge Patricia Williams looked over her reading glasses at the parties assembled before her. Mr. Grady, please stand for the reading of the verdict. Silas stood on unsteady legs, his court-appointed attorney beside him. He couldn't afford his original lawyer anymore, not after his assets have been frozen during the legal proceedings. In the matter of Rourke Technologies versus Silas Grady, this court finds the defendant liable for violations of non-disclosure agreements, theft of proprietary information, and conspiracy to damage the plaintiff's business reputation. Silas felt the floor seem to tilt beneath his feet. The court awards damages in the amount of $8.2 million, plus legal fees and court costs. Your Honor, Silas's lawyer stood. My client doesn't have the financial resources to. Then his assets will be seized to satisfy the judgment. Next case. Outside the courthouse, Silas sat on the stone steps, his head in his hands. Everything was gone: his apartment, his car, his bank accounts, even his furniture. The court had taken it all. A pair of expensive shoes appeared in his field of vision. He looked up to see Adam standing over him, perfectly dressed, as always. Silas, come to gloat. Adam sat down beside him on the courthouse steps. Actually, I came to give you something. He handed Silas a business card. There's a tech support company in Boulder. They're hiring junior developers. The pay is about $40,000 a year. Silas stared at the card. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to start over. Clean slate, as long as you stay away from my industry and my family. Why would you help me? Adam stood, straightening his jacket. Because destroying you completely would make me like them. And I'm not like them. He walked away, leaving Silas alone on the courthouse steps, holding a business card that represented the only future he had left. Denver Family Court, 6 months after the divorce, filing judge Rebecca Martinez had presided over family court for 23 years, and she'd seen every variation of human greed and deception that divorce could produce. But the case of Rourke versus Rourke was proving to be one of the most complex and one-sided she'd ever encountered. Adam sat at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, David Richardson, a silver-haired man whose reputation for thoroughness was legendary in Colorado legal circles. Across the aisle, Kendra sat beside Marshall, who looked like he'd aged a decade in the past year. "Your Honor," Marshall stood for his closing argument, "my client entered this marriage in good faith. She supported her husband emotionally and financially during the critical early years of his business development." "Mr. Alcott," Judge Martinez interrupted, "I've reviewed the financial records. Your client's financial support consisted of approximately $12,000 in miscellaneous expenses over 2 years. Mr. Rourke, meanwhile, was earning income from freelance programming throughout their relationship." Marshall's face flushed. "Nevertheless, Your Honor, the emotional support that included conducting an extramarital affair for 6 months before filing for divorce." The courtroom was silent except for the soft clicking of the court reporter's machine. "Your Honor," Marshall tried again, "the infidelity allegations are documented with video evidence, text messages, and GPS location data spanning several months." Judge Martinez removed her glasses and fixed Marshall with a stare that had intimidated attorneys for 2 decades. "Mr. Alcott, in my 23 years on this bench, I have rarely seen a case with such overwhelming evidence of marital misconduct." She turned to her notes, reading directly from Colorado statute. "Under Colorado law, when adultery can be proven with clear and convincing evidence, it directly impacts spousal maintenance determinations. Furthermore, when said adultery is accompanied by attempts to defraud the wronged spouse of marital assets." Kendra gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. "Mrs. Rourke," the judge continued, "the court has reviewed your attempts to claim ownership of business assets that were legally protected prior to your marriage. The evidence shows you were aware of these protections, as you signed documents acknowledging the corporate structure during your prenuptial negotiations." "Your Honor, my client was not adequately represented during those negotiations," Marshall protested. "Your client was represented by your law firm, Mr. Alcott. Are you claiming your own firm provided inadequate counsel?" Marshall sat down heavily. Judge Martinez looked directly at Kendra. "Mrs. Rourke, please stand." Kendra rose on shaking legs, her face pale beneath carefully applied makeup. "This court finds your claims for spousal maintenance to be without merit. Your conduct during this marriage, specifically your adultery and attempts to fraudulently claim business assets, disqualifies you from any financial support." Kendra's breath came in short gasps. "Furthermore, this court finds that your public statements about Mr. Rourke constitute defamation, as they were made with knowledge of their falsity and with intent to damage his reputation." Judge Martinez turned to Adam. "Mr. Rourke, the court awards you a dissolution of marriage with no financial obligations to the respondent. Additionally, you are awarded custody of the marital pet, the dog named Remy, and damages in the amount of $250,000 for defamation and legal fees." The gavel came down with a sharp crack that echoed through the courtroom. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed both parties. Adam walked past them without comment, but one called out, "Mr. Rourke, do you have anything to say to your ex-wife?" Adam stopped and turned back toward the courthouse steps, where Kendra stood surrounded by cameras, tears streaming down her face. "No," he said simply. "I don't." 6 months after the divorce. The alarm clock's shrill ring jolted Kendra awake at 6:30 a.m. She rolled over in the narrow bed of her studio apartment in Wheat Ridge, squinting at the water stain on the ceiling that had been growing larger each week. The apartment was a far cry from the 5,000-square-foot house in Highlands Ranch she'd called home for 8 years. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from creditors. The defamation judgment had wiped out what little money she'd managed to hide during the divorce proceedings. Her credit was destroyed. Even this apartment had required 3 months rent up front and a co-signer, her mother, who'd flown in from Phoenix to help her daughter navigate bankruptcy. Kendra pulled on the black slacks and white blouse that constituted her uniform at Bella Boutique, the high-end women's clothing store where she now worked as an assistant manager. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd shopped at Bella for years, spending thousands of dollars on clothes she'd worn to charity galas and business dinners. Now she folded those same clothes for customers who looked right through her. The commute to Cherry Creek took 45 minutes on the bus. She'd lost her BMW in the asset seizure, and the used Honda Civic she bought with her last $1,000 had broken down 3 weeks ago. The repair estimate was more than the car was worth. Bella, her manager, Patricia, was already reviewing inventory when Kendra arrived. "You're late," Patricia said without looking up. Patricia was 28, fresh out of college with a retail management degree, and she supervised Kendra with the barely concealed disdain of someone who'd recognized her from the news coverage. "The bus was delayed," Kendra said, grabbing her name tag from behind the counter. "The Henderson party is coming in at 10 for their personal shopping appointment. Make sure the private fitting room is ready." Kendra nodded and headed to the back room. As she arranged champagne flutes and hung designer dresses, she remembered when she'd been the client in these sessions, when shop girls had fawned over her while she spent $5,000 on a single outfit. At T10:15, Mrs. Henderson arrived with her daughter and 2 friends. Kendra recognized her immediately. They'd served on the Children's Hospital Board together for 3 years. "Kendra," Mrs. Henderson's voice was uncertain. Kendra all caught. "It's Kendra Rourke now," she said quietly. "How can I help you today?" The women exchanged glances. The daughter whispered something to her mother, and Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted from recognition to pity. "We're just browsing today," Mrs. Henderson said, though they'd booked a 2-hour personal shopping session. They left after 10 minutes, whispering among themselves as they walked out. During her lunch break, Kendra sat in the back alley behind the store, eating a peanut butter sandwich she'd packed from home. Her phone buzzed with a Google alert she'd set up months ago, any news mention of Adam's name. The headline read, "Tech mogul Adam Rourke donates $5 million to Children's Hospital." The article featured a photo of Adam presenting an oversized check to the hospital's board of directors, the same board where Kendra had once served as vice chair. She scrolled through the comments section, a masochistic habit she couldn't break. Good to see successful people giving back. Much better use of money than supporting gold-digging ex-wives. This guy's a class act. His ex-wife should take notes. Kendra closed the app and finished her sandwich in silence. That evening, she took the bus home to her studio apartment and microwaved a frozen dinner. The local news was running a story about Adam's company expanding internationally, creating 500 new jobs in Denver. His success was everywhere. Billboards for his company lined the highway. News stories about his philanthropy filled the business section. Even the grocery store checkout magazines had started running features about America's most eligible bachelor. She was invisible in his world now, but his world was impossible to escape. 3 months later, outside a closed cafe in downtown Denver, the payphone smelled like cigarettes and desperation. Kendra had sold her smartphone the week before to make rent, and now she stood in the shadow of a building that Adam's company had recently purchased for their new headquarters. She'd been walking past the construction site when she saw him through the windows of the floor where his office would be, reviewing blueprints with architects. He looked exactly the same, focused, controlled, successful. Everything she'd lost, the payphone took quarters. She'd found $4 in her purse, enough for a local call. She dialed his direct office number, the one she'd memorized during their marriage. Adam Rourke's office. Junie's voice was crisp and professional. "This is Kendra. I need to speak with him." A pause. "Ms. Rourke, Mr. Rourke is in a meeting. Please, just for a minute." Another pause, then hold music. Kendra watched her reflection in the phone booth's cracked glass. Her hair was growing out from its expensive cut, roots showing. Her makeup was drugstore quality, applied with shaking hands in the employee bathroom at Bella. "Kendra." Adam's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "Adam." She closed her eyes, gathering courage. "Thank you for taking my call. What do you want?" She'd rehearsed this conversation 100 times, but now the words wouldn't come. "I wanted to apologize. For everything. For Silas, for the divorce, for what my family did to you. Silence. I know you probably don't believe me, but I loved you. I really did. And I threw it all away for something that meant nothing. Is that all? Tears stung her eyes. I was hoping maybe we could talk. Just talk. About what happened, about what, Kendra? About how you cheated on me for 6 months. About how you tried to steal my company. About how you and your family tried to destroy me. I know you're angry. I'm not angry. His voice was perfectly calm. Anger is what you feel toward people who matter. You don't matter to me anymore. The words hit her like a physical blow. Adam, please. I've lost everything. My home, my job, my reputation. I have nothing left. You have exactly what you chose. I made mistakes. You made choices. There's a difference. Kendra pressed her forehead against the cold glass of the phone booth. Please, can't we just meet for coffee? 5 minutes. I just want to explain. I left you the day you underestimated me. The line went dead. Kendra stood holding the receiver until the dial tone became unbearable. Then she hung up and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of downtown Denver like she'd never existed at all. 1 year later, Adam's new headquarters. The press conference was held in the atrium of Adam's new headquarters, a gleaming 30-story tower in downtown Denver. 200 reporters, business leaders, and city officials filled the space beneath a ceiling that soared 5 stories above them. Adam stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the logo of the Rourke Foundation and images of the scholarship recipients who would benefit from his latest initiative. When I was 17, Adam began, his voice carrying easily through the space. I applied for every scholarship I could find, not because I was the smartest kid in my class, but because I was the most desperate. My mother worked 3 jobs to keep food on our table, and college seemed like an impossible dream. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. Today, I'm announcing a $50 million scholarship fund for students from low-income families who want to pursue careers in technology and entrepreneurship. The Rourke Foundation will provide not just tuition assistance, but mentorship, internship opportunities, and seed funding for graduate business ventures. Applause filled the atrium. Flash bulbs popped as photographers captured the moment. This fund is specifically designed for students who understand what it means to fight for every opportunity, who know the value of hard work because they've lived it. In the audience, Junie smiled proudly. She'd been promoted to chief operating officer 6 months earlier, and her salary was more than most executives earned at Fortune 500 companies. Adam had kept his promise to reward loyalty. During the question and answer session, a reporter from the Denver Post raised her hand. Mr. Rourke, your company is now valued at over $500 million. You've become one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Colorado history. Do you have any regrets about how things ended with your ex-wife? Adam considered the question for a moment. The room was absolutely silent. Yeah, he said finally. I should have left sooner. Laughter rippled through the crowd. The reporter tried to follow up, but Adam had already moved on to the next question. After the press conference, Adam retreated to his office on the 30th floor. Junie followed, carrying a tablet with his afternoon schedule. The mayor wants to meet about the urban renewal project, she said. And your mother called. She's very proud of the scholarship announcement. Adam smiled. His mother now lived in a house he'd bought her in Coeur d'Alene, mortgage-free, with a monthly allowance that ensured she'd never work again unless she wanted to. Schedule the mayor for next week. And call my mother back, tell her I'll visit next month. One more thing. Junie hesitated. Security flagged someone who's been hanging around the building. A woman. She matches the description of your ex-wife. Adam walked to the windows, looking down at the street 30 floors below. Somewhere down there, Kendra was trying to find a way back into his life. She'd been calling his office every few weeks, showing up at company events, even approaching his employees in restaurants and coffee shops. Increase security, he said without emotion. If she approaches the building again, have her arrested for trespassing. Yes, sir. After Junie left, Adam stood alone in his office, looking out at the city he now commanded. Denver sprawled in every direction, and his company's influence touched every corner of it. His software managed operations for hundreds of businesses. His foundation supported dozens of charities. His real estate investments were reshaping entire neighborhoods. And somewhere in that vast city, the people who tried to destroy him were living with the consequences of their choices. At Adam's office, 11:47 p.m., the Denver skyline glittered like scattered diamonds against black velvet. Adam sat behind his desk, a glass of 25-year-old Macallan in his hand, reviewing the quarterly reports that had arrived that afternoon. Revenue up 43%. International expansion ahead of schedule. Stock value at an all-time high. His company now employed over 3,000 people across 12 countries. The software they built was used by Fortune 500 companies worldwide. Politicians called him for advice. Billionaires sought his investment expertise. That on his desk sat a single-framed photograph of him at age 8, standing beside his mother outside their trailer in Idaho. She was wearing her Walmart uniform, her hair pulled back after a double shift, but she was smiling. In the photo, her hand rested on his shoulder, and her pride was evident even through their poverty. Education is your way out, baby. You're smarter than any of them. She'd been right. His phone buzzed with a text from Zeke Brody. Saw the news about the scholarship fund. Carol will be proud. Hell, I'm proud. You did it, kid. Adam smiled and typed back. We did it. Another message appeared, this one from an unknown number. I saw your press conference today. You look happy. I'm glad. Okay. He stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. At his computer, Adam pulled up the security feed from the building's lobby. The camera showed the empty street outside, lit by the glow of his company's logo on the building's facade. No one was there now, but he knew she'd be back. She always came back, that he'd built an empire without forgiveness, without compromise, without mercy. Every choice had been calculated, every move strategic. He'd turned their betrayal into fuel for his success, their greed into motivation for his generosity to others to eye in the distance. A plane took off from Denver International Airport, its lights blinking as it climbed toward stars. Tomorrow, he would fly to Seattle to meet with Amazon about a partnership that would double his company's reach. Next week, London. The month after, Tokyo. The world was opening to him in ways he'd never imagined as a poor kid from Idaho. Adam finished his whiskey and turned off his computer. The city spread below him like a conquered territory, and for the first time in years, he felt complete peace. He'd won everything that mattered and lost nothing he couldn't afford to lose. In the elevator down to the parking garage, he thought about the path that had brought him here, the betrayal that had revealed his enemy's true nature, the legal battles that had proven his preparation, the slow, methodical destruction of those who'd underestimated him, that they'd taught him that mercy was weakness, that forgiveness was surrender. He'd learned the lesson well. The elevator doors opened, and Adam Rourke walked into the night, leaving behind a building that stood as a monument to the power of never backing down. Somewhere in the city, his enemies slept in beds they'd made for themselves, and Adam slept in victory.